It'll already be set up on your nozzle flow check, and it's going to have a pressure on there. The first thing we need to do is make sure the pressure we're reading on the machine and the pressure that we're reading at the boom is the same. The way to do that is with this tool right here. It is just a manual pressure gauge that hooks where the tip hooks. The part number for this is PM Test Kit. I'm going to give you guys a book later. It's got this part number in there. And you can write it down, and I can say it again if you need me to later on. But PM Test Kit. All this is a manual gauge that goes on the boom. That way I can look at I'm using this as my electronic gauge today. But I can look at my electronic gauge to know if it's right. Because we all know electronics can fail us. When an electronic fails us, we have issues, especially when it comes to sprayers, for the fact that if my electronic pressure gauge is not reading correctly, it's just going to do what it does. It's going to think that there's pressure there when there's not. So what Billy was talking to you about, taking that pressure transducer out and calibrate it to 0, the best way to do it, again, Billy said this, was to take that pressure transducer out, have it in the open air where it's true 0, and calibrate it. The reason for that is no matter how much I get out of that boom, no matter how many times I move it up and down trying to get pressure off of it, there's going to be 1 pound always sitting in there. And when you calibrate to 0, you're 1 pound off already, every time. That's why it's, you always take it out and get that true 0. But what we do here is I would have this on, have my electronic gauge up here. I would cut my boom. What I would do is I would put a pressure in it, 40 pounds. That's what we're going to work with today, 40 pounds. What's my electronic gauge reading? 40 pounds. So what I would do, I would look at this, now I'd go down here. What am I reading down here? Can you all see that? I know it's a smaller gauge. It's 40 pounds. I'm reading 40 pounds. So I know now that my pressures are right. So before I even did my test, I had to know that. Because if my pressures were wrong, my catch cut test would never be right. So that's why this is about a $20 tool right here, guys. It's not bad to have one of these in the sprayer. PM Test Kit. But now I know my pressures are correct. So we're good. Don't have to do that. So what I would do now is go back in the sprayer, and I would tell it what I'm going to do. Say I'm going to go 10 miles an hour, then I'll put my rate in, whatever my rate, what I was going to spray. 10 gallons per acre, 15, 20, whatever you're going to spray. That's what you would put in. You know what I do now is I would actually catch my tips to see what they're putting out. To do that, I have to have a catch cup. With my catch cup here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to catch for a minute today. I've been having to do for 30 seconds for the fact that I had a baby cup first. And I can catch for a minute today. We can actually make sure we're putting out what we need to put out. So what we'll do now is I'm going to cut my spray boom back on. When you catch, remember this, when you do a catch cut test, you want to get that as far up on that tip as you possibly can, for the fact that even that overspray we fill out here counts. Because that's what actually comes out of the boom. So we got to catch all of that. So, I'm going to go for 1 minute, guys. And stop. And most of the time you have your phone or anything on you, your phone's got a stopwatch on it, just use that. Hope I don't run out of water. We're going to stop at 30 seconds. 30 seconds. So 30 seconds. But look, if you look at your paper here, at a 0.4 tip, what I would need to catch is half of 51.2, which is around 27 ounces, is what I would need to catch. So if I looked here, 24's here, 25, 26, 27. We made it. Exactly where it needs to be. At that point we know it's good. Good tip. Now, when I talk about good tip, I mean the amount it's putting out is good. Still doesn't mean the tip is good. So we'll look at now the spray pattern. I got a 0.4 flat fan tip here. So I need to look at the pattern here. You guys have got a round right here. It's kind of hard to see with a lot of light around, but you look at your pattern here on this flat fan. You look right here in the center, you want to see a small teardrop. That's what that is. The teardrop's what we're looking for right out of the tip. And then out of the tip, we're going to look, we're probably around 19-inch spacing, 19-20-inch spacing our tips are. So what we would look at the tip next to it. With the tip next to it, about halfway down, we want to see it X across each other. We want to see them actually overlap each other. Not all the way up top, we don't want to see them overlap each other, and not all the way at the bottom. Right about dead center where we want to see them overlap each other right here. So I can look at this one right here. Can y'all see this? Y'all think that's a good pattern right there? Good spray pattern? You can see that? That's good. That is. It is. It's a good spray pattern. So in fact, I know it's good because I took this out of the box about 2 weeks ago and put it on here. So I know it's a brand new good tip. It's a good spray pattern. What about that? You see what I'm talking about when I talk about that teardrop? We don't have it here. We're almost cut off right here in the center. My pattern's way too far to each side. What about that? Way too wide, right? Teardrop actually looks pretty good. But we're way too wide for what we need to be. Say you had 72 tips on your machine. You got 72 tips doing the same exact thing. If you walk past them, you may not know. You may not notice because all the tips are kind of worn the same. But to get away from that, we'll do this move. Reset this bad boy. Okay, y'all gave me something too complicated. There we go. All right. Again, I'm going to catch for 30 seconds with my small jug today. Catch for 30 seconds. So in 30 seconds, I should catch 27 ounces, right? Seconds. 15 seconds. 20 seconds. 25 seconds. We already know. We are way overflying. For the fact that we're overflying so much, the fact that it's almost doubling what the normal tips you put out. The way I explain that is the fact that if we overfly by that much, that is wasting chemical, which means wasting money. And we're actually hurting our crop. Whatever we're spraying, we're over-applying tremendously. And we all know crops are pretty particular about what gets sprayed on them. So if that happens in a situation, you might be killing some crop out there just by over-applying. So that's why tips are so, I know for the fact that tips can be expensive, especially John Deere tips. Our tips are a little bit more expensive than everybody else's. When you guys buy tips, do y'all know who y'all buy from?
We buy ours from y'all.
You do buy from Deere? And the number one answer I get most time is a co-op or a farm store or something like that where most people get their tips from. The one thing that we've seen over time, our tips last longer. They may cost a little bit more, but they do last longer than your normal farm store tip. And for you guys coming today, we're giving 10% off your next tip purchase. Doesn't have to be today. If you start in the spring and you guys are going to buy some tips, you get 10% off that tip purchase for coming today. That's kind of one of our thank yous for coming. But this shows you right here that if your tips are not where they need to be, all we're doing is wasting money. All we're doing is wasting money and hurting crop. So that's one thing that we got to pay attention to, and it doesn't get paid attention to enough. And now you don't have to call the shop to come out here and do it. You guys can just buy you a catch cup and go out there and know what size tip you have. Take my little piece of paper and know in a minute how many you should catch. On a nozzle flow check now, when we talked about, go back to that. On nozzle flow check, however many sections you have, catch 2 tips per that section. Catch 2 tips just to know that we're right. When you catch that, it's going to, you spray gallons per acre. That's how you spray. But we're not looking for gallons per acre. We're looking for gallons per minute. If my gallons per minute are right, my gallons per acre will be right. So just use this formula right here. All you do, take your jug, catch for 1 minute. You take your ounces times the ounces you caught times the number of tips that are on that machine. On my example down here, I have 72 tips. Divide that by 128, which is how many ounces are in a gallon, and then you'll get whatever your gallons per minute are. So what you would do is find your gallons per minute, have somebody else sitting in the seat, tell them what's my gallons per minute reading up there. If it's reading the same from what you caught, what you got in your calculator, you're good. Everything's good. You can go spray it. Not a bad thing to do every spring when you start up. But especially if you got some tips you know that might be a little worn, not a bad thing to do. All right, last thing I'll talk about right now, I'll get on my soapbox about flow meters. Y'all seen these before? Does anybody still have a silver one on their machine? Most nowadays you'll see the black poly ones. They're not silver anymore. These were the style we had years ago. But what happened, these were good flow meters, but they didn't last long enough. They didn't last as long as we wanted them to. You start hearing things like this. There's an impeller inside there. That impeller is what actually the water goes through, and that's how we count how many gallons per minute are going through. What it is this impeller and this sensor are calibrated to each other. The bottom of this flow meter has a number stamped on it, 912. What that means, when they calibrated this flow meter, that this sensor counted 912 fins before 1 gallon of solution went through it. That's how we're calibrated. Every day that you spray, every day you're out in the field spraying, every day, take this out, clean it out with breaking parts cleaner. Every single day. Take it, spray it to this side, turn around, spray it to that side. Because if you're not clean in this situation, I just told you guys that 912 is how many fins we have to count to get 1 gallon. What if I got one that's sticking, one that's sluggish? We're going to over-apply for the fact that we're not counting all the solution going through. So we're going to over-apply. Every day, it takes 5 minutes to lower your boom, cut off your flow, pull this out and clean it. The way to check these, you can shake them. See if you hear any. You hear that? Can y'all hear that? That's a bad flow meter. Take it, blow through it. Just a normal blow like that, that impeller should spin with no issue. It should just spin freely. And when it stops, it should come to a slow stop. If it comes to an abrupt stop, it's a bad flow meter. Or it's dirty flow meter. Get that braking parts cleaner through both sides. Again, if this impeller is not spinning correctly, we're going to over-apply. And then you're going to get erratic rates, and you're going to call the dealership. They're going to come out there. The technician's going to come out there, pull this out, clean it, bam, bam, $100 to you just because you didn't clean your flow meter. That's all it is to it. Any questions about that?